Good morning, everyone. Now, you may be curious what's going on, so let me just fill you in a little bit. As we speak, the live stream has promptly ended, and everyone from the service in person today is going down to the social hall, and we're all doing Sunday school together. So each table is going to get a parable. And if you don't know what a parable is, I'll explain in a moment. But Jesus told a lot of parables in the Bible, and I figured more than anything else that we could discuss as a group, parables are something that we could all give our own voice to and might hear in a new light by reading them through children's Bibles today. So today, everyone is making their way down to the social hall, and we're going to experience doing Sunday school together. And I didn't want to leave you out as an online viewer. So we have something special planned. While everyone else is learning about specific parables and doing an activity and a lesson with those, you are going to learn about parables in general. And we're going to talk together today about the Sermon on the Mount. I'm going to read you a story. We're going to do an activity. We're going to have fun. So I hope that you have brought your whimsical nature to this online viewing today. And I hope that you'll join me in doing Sunday school together online. Now, before we start, I want to ask you a question, and it'll come up on the next screen as well. We're going to read about the Sermon on the Mount from the Book of Belonging. What do you currently know about the Sermon on the Mount? I want you to pause the video on the next slide, and it will remind you to do just that. And I want you to take out a pen and paper or your phone or something, and I want you to write down every single thing that you remember being in the Sermon on the Mount. And we're going to read it together, and then you're going to read it by yourself. And together we're going to see how those thoughts line up with what's in there, and maybe you'll find some stuff that you didn't remember. So I'm going to read you a story that is about the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew 4-7. And as I read it, the pictures that are in the Bible will come up right next to me right here, so you don't have to worry about what I'm reading, and I don't have to try to turn it around and read to you. But just know that this is a way that we teach the Sermon on the Mount to children. And I'm hoping that it will speak to you in maybe a new light today and shed some light on some of the things that are in the Sermon on the Mount. Yeshua, Jesus, became quite famous. Not in the worldwide way you may think of, but in the small towns and irrepressible goodness. The way that the best bakery in the valley becomes famous. The way that the most beautiful sunrise view in the foothills becomes famous. People could not help but bubble over with the good news of what Jesus was doing. At the wells, in the marketplace, through the vineyards, and under the stars, stories and whispers flew. Have you heard about the new teacher? He says that God's kingdom is here. He cures illnesses and performs miracles. And people began to flock to Jesus, like birds riding a warm wind. They brought him their sick friends to be healed. They waited to hear his teaching. They repented, returning to God and believing in their true names. Crowds covered the hillsides around where he stayed, made up all kinds of different people. The sick, the scandalous, the poor, the pagan, the pious, people who would never, ever be seen together, found themselves drawn to the same place for the same reason: Jesus. On one particular day, the disciples were looking at the crowd, and Jesus was looking at the disciples. He saw their eyes jumping from person to person, naming them in their minds: nobodies, mess-ups, heathens, failures, rule breakers, outsiders. Jesus sighed. We all know that it's hard to remember or believe who God says you are when other people are always calling you something different. This is why words and names are so important. Some of the stickiest names are the ones that convince us that we don't belong with God. Names that really just mean outsider. But Jesus knew that in God's dream, nobody is treated as an outsider. God had been telling God's people to trust God's names for them first, to invite others in, to care for the forgotten, and give them new names like belonging, beloved, and delightful. God made people to be like little mirrors, to reflect what God is like, and to act like God in the world. And now Jesus would remind them about the lives for which they were made. God's kingdom was spilling in, but it was going to look much different than even Jesus' closest friends expected. So Jesus smiled and spoke gently to these friends, showing them how little things were going to be. See these people? Their spirits are begging, he said, gesturing to the ragtag crowd. And God is for them. God is for the sad, for the gentle, and the searching. They see God's kingdom in new ways. Jesus' friends looked out across the hills, dotted with people eager for a taste of heaven on earth. People were warned about. People they avoided. People that they pitied. Was Jesus really saying that there was goodness there? That God's blessing was on those people? Jesus went on, God is for the merciful, the honest, the peacemakers. Yes, they are in this crowd too. They give us glimpses of God's kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. Jesus knew that this wouldn't be an easy lesson. Habits are hard to break, and God's people had many ideas about belonging, about who was in and who was out. Jesus' new way of thinking would divide people and create arguments. God is for you when others insult you and reject you for acting like me. But you're supposed to light up the world, Jesus reminded them. This is the way that you should act and show others God's love for them. The disciples listened closely as Jesus continued to paint a beautiful and startling picture of what God's dream for God's people looked like. Some of it was familiar, and some of it felt brand new. Remember the mountain of God, when Moses told you to love God and how to love one another well? Watch me, and I'll show you how to do that. Jesus spoke for a long time, with lesson after lesson, new ways to live, a new type of kingdom. But when would it come? The people listening wondered. The hard and holy way of living that Jesus described sounded beautiful, true, and good. They wanted to live like that. But as they looked at the world around them, of war and suffering and sickness and tears, it seemed unlikely and impossible. Will it be an instant fix? How will things change? Is Jesus going to destroy the Roman power machine? No, Jesus told them in his mysterious way. This is not like the violent clashes and conquest throughout history. God's kingdom is here, but also not here. Here but not here, the disciples murmured and scratched their heads. This is confusing. So Jesus wove together some word pictures, hoping to help them understand. God's kingdom is spilling out bit by bit. He tried to show them it's already here, and it has almost arrived. A kingdom of already and almost. It's like a tiny mustard seed that is planted and will grow to cover the hillside. It's like the bit of yeast in a batch of dough that changes the way the dough looks and expands. It's like a net thrown into the water that catches fish of every kind. Things have changed, and things will continue to change. You're just getting peeks and glimpses of what will someday be everywhere. Jesus traveled from town to town with his friends, and everywhere he went, it was a show and tell about God's kingdom, what it was like, how they could live there. And to the people living in the small towns and villages suffering under the Roman power machine, Jesus' message felt like the best hope that they had experienced in a long time. Like a waft of warm bread first thing in the morning, like the first glimmer of sunrise over the foothills. It felt like goodness was peeking in at last, and they couldn't help but share. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. All right, that was a good story, and hopefully it told the Sermon on the Mount in a way that you've never really heard it before. I want you now to do two things. First, find a Bible, or just search online, or go on your phone, because everybody has a Bible app on their phone nowadays. And I want you to skim through the Sermon on the Mount, from Matthew 4 to 7. You don't have to read every word, but skim through it and see what parts did this story leave out? What parts did it keep in? What do you think that tells us about what parts might be important Are they all important and we should write another story? What parts did you remember from that activity earlier? What parts did you leave out? All of this will be on the next screen. Now, as you're finishing that up, there are a few more questions I want you to think about. And if you are in a group, which I hope you are, with your family, with your friends watching this, I want you to think about these questions. And if you're by yourself, perhaps text a friend, call a friend, or at the very least, think about them yourself and be ready to talk next time that we see each other. So here are the questions. Feel free to pause the screen and talk through all of them or think through all of them before unpausing the video. One thing that I want people to do down in the social hall, and I'm having them do in their Sunday school groups, is finding songs, because you know I'm all about the songs, the music. So I want you to think about the Sermon on the Mount. And I want you to find at least a song or two that would describe the Sermon on the Mount. Maybe you can think of a song that perfectly summarizes what it's about or the important messages within it. Maybe there's a part within it that you think of, like a mustard seed growing into a whole bush, or the peacekeepers that Jesus talks about. Think about what messages you're taking away from this story today. And I want you to think of a song that represents either the Sermon on the Mount or a part of it. So why don't you do that now? Pause the video and find a song. Friends, I hope that you have had fun here today. I hope that these stories and these activities have brought you back to some of the fun of Sunday school and you've been able to experience God as a child again, because we are all children of God. One final thing that we're going to be doing together is praying. And I would like you to try to pray on your own for a little bit. And I'm also going to be in prayer with you. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to start the prayer, say a couple of things, and then on the next slide, there are going to be some ideas for things that you could pray about in your life. And then I'm going to come back and we'll say the Lord's Prayer here together. Sound good? All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for each and every individual, both in person and online, who is learning with me today. Help us to continually grow closer to you. Help us to see your word in new ways every day. God, help these individuals, adults, children, everyone with a childlike faith, to pray things that are pleasing to you. Help them to pray, Lord. God, I pray for all of these things that were prayed in your name today. Help everyone experiencing grief. Celebrate with everyone experiencing joy. And help us to all pray the words that your Son taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for joining us online this morning. Wherever you are, whether you're up in Maine, down in Florida, somewhere on the West Coast, or somewhere all around the world, thank you for joining us at UCC Southbury. It's my prayer that you take your childlike faith from this morning and let it carry you through the week, the month, the year. As long as you can hold on to your childlike faith, keep doing so. And when you need to go back to it, pick up a kid's Bible, read a story in a new light. I find that helps to invigorate every childlike aspect of faith that we can have. Go in peace.